All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining our second episode on designing the right website for your brand. Today, we have Derek Lauritzen. He's our Vice President and Creative Director at Solid Digital, and he's going to be going through some of the things and processes that we do on our side to come up with the right fit of design and brand. I will tell you, this is not going to be a webinar where we're sharing a bunch of designs that we think are good or designs that we think are bad. It's more about like, how do we build the right foundation for our team and our designers to create the right fit? Like design is subjective, but what we try to do as an agency is get to knowing the right message and visual representation before we go into to actually putting pen to pixels. So without further ado, we call him Derek. His friends call him D-Rock. Derek Lauritzen.
Back in the day. Yeah, thanks, Jesse. So I'm excited to share some things with everyone today that will, hopefully help you gain a better understanding of the role that design plays in an overall website redesign project. I've been with Solid Digital and designing sites for over 10 years now, and I can honestly say that every website has its own unique set of challenges. But the thing that we run into the most often is really creating an experience that is a direct representation of who you are as an organization. When most people think of web design, they immediately just think of the visual aesthetics or the pretty pictures. But it is way more than that. And there's a lot of prep work and designing that actually happens before you even start creating the visuals for your site. So in this webinar, I'll cover 4 foundational building blocks that are often overlooked to designing and maintaining a website that actually fits your organization. So the 4 main areas that we'll go through today are defining your brand and identity, knowing your audience, defining solutions, and continuously improving. As we look at each one of these areas, we'll be sharing some insights on how we as an agency work with our clients throughout a website redesign project. That will ultimately prepare you for potentially working with the agency to redesign your new website. I wanted to start out with a few facts that will hopefully perk your ears up and grab your attention. 94% of first impressions are design related. 83% of people say a seamless experience across all devices is very important to them. 75% of people base their credibility of a business on the website alone. 77% of marketing leaders say a strong brand is critical to the growth plans. It's pretty insightful, right? Nowadays, your website is the place that helps define your brand. It's the first place that someone's going to go to really learn more about your business. It should be a direct representation of who you are, why you exist, and the values that you provide. Believe it or not, I meet a lot of marketing directors that do not fully understand the difference between brand and identity, and it's okay. Just know that your brand is actually much more than just your logo. So a brand is the gut feeling and emotional response people have based on their experience with your business. Your brand is built by your customers. However, it can and should be a direct result of your strategy, identity, and branding efforts, which are 100% within your control. So I wanted to zoom in on these 3 areas real quick. Your brand strategy is a long-term blueprint and articulation of who you are and why you exist. Think of this as like your brand personality. Your brand identity, on the other hand, are the things you can see. They create a consistent look for your organization. In other words, your visuals. So the word branding refers to the entire process, application, and management of your brand and strategy, your brand strategy and brand identity. So in other words, the output or actions you take to apply your personality and your visuals. Your branding is your social media, your business cards, the conversations and interactions you have with your audience. It's really the way in which you communicate with the world. So let's look at this from a brand guidelines perspective. The purpose of brand guidelines are to inform your branding and marketing efforts. I once asked one of our B2B healthcare clients for their brand guidelines, and in return, I received their logo, color palette, and some font guidelines. And this actually happens quite a bit, more than you'd think. But I get it. It's a pretty common thing to mix up these terms. There are a number of different areas or ways to define and document your brand strategy. Typically, the core areas are your vision and mission, core values, brand positioning, messaging, voice and tone, and target audience. Uh, and then on the identity side, this usually includes like your logo, color palettes, fonts, graphics, photography, or what other visuals that you need to incorporate throughout your branding. Again, the sum of these two make up your brand guidelines. So these are just a few tools and exercises that we leverage when we're trying to fully understand a brand and identity. So Google 3-hour brand sprint, this is really helpful for our clients who have not fully documented their brand strategy. The personality slider, this is actually a part of the brand sprint, but this is an exercise that we go through with every one of our clients. And then a celebrity comparable. This is just a fun one where you kind of think about your brand as a celebrity. One of my favorite ones that we've ever had from a client was Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. They had said that he's down to earth, approachable, someone you could grab a beer with, yet very, very knowledgeable. I just thought this was a perfect, representation of that client's brand, and it really actually helped create visuals that coincide with that. Jesse, just to call you out real quick, I'm curious, if you had to think about solid digital as a celebrity, is there one that comes to mind for you?
I feel like I have answered this question before. I'm going to say, well, it's either Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks. It's a celebrity Tom. No, I would actually go with Tom Hanks. I've heard that he's a great person to be around on set. He works really hard, but he has a lot of fun as well. I feel like he does really good at his job, and I feel like we do too. So that'd be my choice.
I'm with you. I like it. Part two, knowing your audience is music to a designer's ear. Before thinking about the solution, a designer really needs to know who they're creating the experience for. So to define your audience, you need to consider whose opinion do you really care about. Now, when I ask most marketing directors to think about this question, they always go straight to, well, it's my customers, right? But you can't forget about other audiences that will be interacting with your website and your brand. It's important to really prioritize and rank your audience so that you really know who to focus on. Again, this is whose opinion do you care about the most? Now, picture going into a store. If you don't see what you want or what you're expecting, you're likely to just leave that store and go to another one, right? Now think about that in the terms of a user coming to your website. Same situation. If they're not seeing exactly what they came there for right off the bat, they're gonna bounce and go to another website. So be sure to keep your users top of mind when you're coming up with your own organizational goals and objectives. Now to do this, it's good to think about the problems your user faces in the form of problem statements. To define a problem statement, you just need to consider who, what, where, and why. As a quick example, I just created a problem statement for a made up online fitness coaching company. The example is I have a young working professional. I am a young working professional trying to lose weight, but I'm struggling because I work from home and I do not have a gym nearby. This makes me feel frustrated and bad about myself. So just looking at that, it's really considered who, what, where, and why. And thinking about the problems will put you in the right state of mind to explore and come up with the best design solutions. You should be able to look at web page design and answer whether or not you're helping solve a particular user problem. A few tools and exercises we use when learning more about our clients' audiences, of course, personas, documented personas. This just helps everyone in the company gain a deeper understanding of your audience and creates that alignment internally. Surveys and interviews, I mean, speaking directly with your audience is a very powerful way of obtaining valuable information. And then the customer journey mapping, this is another exercise that's a big part of our process. It helps us as designers and marketers understand pain points and opportunities kind of throughout that customer's interaction with a brand. Now, after you have a better understanding for your brand and audience, it's this is time to get creative and come up with solutions. So the Albert Einstein once said, creativity is intelligence having fun. Meaning just, taking all that you know, all that you've learned, and just having fun with it, thinking outside the box. So this is, believe it or not, actually my favorite part, the ideation. This is the time to really go wild and come up with these crazy ideas. It's important to make sure you're documenting these so that you can refer back to all these ideas later on. I will say it's easy to get caught up in solving the problem for yourself during this. Recently, we were working with a client that was trying to create a solution for data scientists to quickly collect information about a particular subject matter that they were conducting research for. And one of our initial ideas was to break this information out into charts and graphs onto various pages throughout the site. But after going back and realizing that these data scientists want like information overload and they can process data much quicker and much easier than we can, uh, we went with another one of our ideas, which was to consolidate these charts side by side and provide more of a robust way of configuring the data within one view. Now, because we had several ideas or ways of solving that particular problem, we were able to shift pretty quickly to another solution. Now, eventually, you will need to break down all of these ideas and figure out which ones fit your brand, consider your audience, and really are the best solution to the problem. So it's this idea or technique of diverge and converge. For us, depending on the project, there could be a number of different artifacts or visuals that help showcase the overall strategy and design direction. It usually consists of a sitemap, wireframe, and a style board. And once we have the green light on those, we move straight into the design and development for the key pages within the browser. This is just a quick example of a sitemap we created, which is just showcasing the information architecture and all of the pages that will exist on a given website. And after we have all the pages accounted for via the sitemap, we create wireframes and design and create wireframes to showcase the page content and the hierarchy. This is really our skeleton for the design. And I mentioned style boards. Instead of designing a static page or a ton of static pages, the way we represent the design aesthetic or the design direction is in the form of what we call a style board. So this is kind of a cross between a UI design and a mood board. It includes page elements that will live throughout the website. The goal here is to really capture just the visual language, the overall like feeling that we want to convey, and it's just something that we do before moving forward with all of the and designing out all of the pages on a site. Now, a very critical step and something that we never overlook is the communication around how and why we came up with a particular design solution. I've heard horror stories from other agencies or about other agencies from our clients that have worked with these agencies in the past, where a design was simply sent over via email or just thrown over the wall without any real explanation around why they came up with these solutions. I cannot stress enough, the importance of getting all the key stakeholders and decision makers in the same room so that everyone can get that full explanation of the design strategy. The way we structure our design presentations is by telling a story, with a beginning, middle, and end. So at the beginning, we're restating the project goals and objectives. We're summarizing key learnings from our research and discovery conversations. And then in the middle, we're going through the overall strategy and approach, ensuring that we tie those back to the problems that we're trying to solve. And then at the end, we're spending a good amount of time just walking through the visuals, the site map, the wireframes, the design direction. And as we're doing this, we like to open up the floor to gather live feedback and answer any questions, clarifying questions that might come up.
Can I just mention something on that?
Sure.
I mean, like, this is one of the things that comes up a lot in sales and our conversations with prospects about, what happens if the designs that you give us end up not being what we like, and what are you going to do about it? And I think part of the reason why we spend so much time getting and collaborating towards this presentation is that there should never be a situation where somebody's surprised by what we're delivering. I mean, I feel like it's kind of like building a statue, right? It's like the more that we get out of those sessions leading up to actually doing the design, the more we understand our path and what we are going to do, so that when we get to this end presentation, everybody in the room is basically telling the same story, and we're not saying anything different from us, the client, anybody else on our team.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Like, this is, we say presentation and we do present it as such, but it's all of these things, all of these conversations that we've been having together that lead up to this. So yeah, as you mentioned, it's there's a lot of collaboration that's happening to get to this point. Just a few tools we use to create alignment on the design direction. Website gut checks. This is a fun exercise where we show off like a handful of sites to all of the stakeholders at the same time, and kind of have them yell out or jot down their first impressions on what they're feeling, whether that's good or bad. And then on the competitive analysis, we actually do this in various forms depending on the need for the client. But regardless, we always try to make it a point to try and separate ourselves from the crowd. Mood boards are just a really good way of gathering ideas quickly and drawing inspiration from others. So once your website is up and running, you're done for a few years, right? That is false. A product designer at Google stated this very simply: design is never done. Your website is something you need to consistently or constantly evaluate and improve upon. Now, to really know the effectiveness of your design, you have to look at the data and collect feedback. This can come in various forms, such as Google Analytics, which I'm sure most everyone is familiar with, or conversion tracking. You just need to be sure to know what you're measuring against. Ideally, that is your project goals or KPIs that were set in the beginning. And once you have a better understanding of what's working and what's not, you should make incremental design improvements on the areas that are not. Create an ongoing process for testing out new solutions. I highly recommend split testing designs. Uh, I've literally seen conversion metrics double as a result of A/B tests. Uh, and then you're also going to need the ability to make changes fairly easily. We use a page builder tool called Elementor. It's been a game changer for us and for our clients, just in terms of the time and resources needed to execute on things such as like a new marketing landing page. Just as you're making updates to your website based on analytics and feedback, you should also use your website as that staple for your branding efforts. Your website is the place to showcase where you're headed as an organization, and should really represent the most accurate version of your culture. I've seen it far too often where a website is super outdated and it's playing catch up to where the organization is. And honestly, this should be the exact opposite. Technologies and best practices change all the time, and you need to stay ahead of them. For example, we still talk to a good amount of prospects that have yet to create a mobile optimized experience for their site, um, even when half of their audience is using mobile devices, which is pretty crazy to me. So there are tons of things you can do to monitor, improve, and evolve your online experience. I called out Hotjar as something we've used this in the past. It captures screen recordings of real users interacting with your site. It's a bit creepy, but it's also very informative to a designer. Digital style guides. Another thing we've done for some of our clients in the past, and something we've done for ourselves, is to create a mini site for our brand style guide to live. If you'd like, you can go check out branding.soliddigital.com, just as an example or reference. And then digital growth is our methodology for digital marketing strategy. Jesse, I know this is kind of your baby here. I didn't know if you wanted to jump in and maybe touch on this real quick.
I mean, I think as digital growth applies to design, it goes back to some of the iteration stuff that Derek was mentioning before. I mean, with digital growth for us, it's about like how is or how are the digital channels, including your website, adding to the value of your organization. So, design would definitely play a part in that. How, A/B testing, doing those types of activities to see if you can lead to more conversions. Digital growth is for us like, what are the measurements that we're using to determine the value of our website asset? And once we know what those measurements are, what are we doing to improve it? And so I think design is always a piece and element of that. Like, I think especially when it comes to like consistency, and like if we're talking about marketing across multiple channels, like, the website is always the hub, and all of these different things of the spoke. Like, we got to make sure that we're consistent in the way that we are presenting our brand, talking about our brand, the visuals, and an ad being aligned with the landing page that we send them to, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. What I'd love for everyone to take away from this is really just, there are sites out there that look really cool or have amazing interactions, and they're very impressive. However, you have to remember that the most important thing is to fit your website to your brand and make sure it resonates with your audience. I promise, as a result, this will help grow your brand and make your marketing efforts much easier. right. Jesse, did we want to cover any Q&A or?
Yeah, I got two questions for you.
Okay.
The first one's a tough one. Uh, in the background, you have a variety of different designs. Which one is your favorite?
Oh man, you know what? I have a few on my dresser over here that haven't been put up, and those are some of my favorite. But yeah, I have three wonderful children that have made all of these, and for me to pick one, I don't think I can because they all have some of these special.
The,
Honestly, like I love
the
them all.
Sophie's choice kind of question. Yeah, you don't want
I could not pick one.
to.
I tend to like my youngest daughter. She does a lot of the scribbles, the abstract. I don't know. The way she uses all these different colors, I gravitate towards. So I prefer the abstract, I guess, if I had to answer.
Okay, I'll keep you off the hook there. Then the other question is, do you have an opinion on when a company should redesign their website versus update their existing one, and why?
Yeah, I think, and Jesse, feel free to jump in on this question too. Really, what that comes down to is uh, the amount of time and resources needed to update or redesign, right? So if you have a team that you're surrounded by, be a designer, a producer, a marketing lead, and you have that team that really understands what it takes to redesign a website, then go for it, right? Typically, the missing piece to that is the technology piece. A lot of times, when prospects reach out to us and are wanting to redesign their site, it's a big part of, hey, we can't do anything with this site because we can't even update a page on our site. The technology is so outdated. We're on this robust CMS and have no clue how to do anything. I would say that's like 90% of the time. So in terms of when is the right time, I don't know if I could answer that one versus updating. If you have the capabilities of updating and you have the team to support you to do that, and the technology is allowing you to do that, then go for it. But on the other hand, if you don't have that team there to really help guide you and create all of these aspects, again, it's a combination of all of these different talents that are really required to build a really rock solid website design. Then I would say at that point in time, it's probably good to look at a redesign.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think what I would add is, for me, your website is, for all intents and purposes, the best representation of your brand. So your brand and your website have to be aligned as much as possible. And when you feel, there's that 180-degree difference between your brand and your website, that's probably the point where there's no real coming back to what you have. One of the things that we really try to do, and like, especially through the things that or the methods that Derek was talking about in the beginning, is, really kind of like thinking about the brand aspirationally and, trying to push the website to be a future representation and visualization of your brand so that you can kind of catch up to it. And the goal would be that you don't ever really catch up to it as long as you are keeping on doing those iterations beyond that. If you feel like your website's only a little bit behind your brand, then yeah, by all means, like, let's not go and tear it all down and start over, right? Like, let's see what we can do to use that as a base, as a foundation for making improvements and catching it up. And I'd much rather be in that position than in the position where I feel like people are going out to my website and they just it doesn't represent who we are at all. That's a big problem to me. Like, I think your website should be an asset, and if it's not who you are, then it's a liability.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes back to the brand guidelines as well. Not having something in place that everyone is aligned on in terms of the brand strategy and the identity makes it extremely difficult to you know redesign your site and think that it's going to be a better representation of who you are. It, having those foundational pieces in place to then inform your website is very critical. And I'm not uh, saying that it's a huge undertaking to tighten those up to make sure that they're there. We were recently worked with a nonprofit that is a well-known nonprofit, and I thought of them as really having everything together from a brand standpoint. And come to find out, they didn't really have much documentation in place in terms of their strategy or their identity. So we went through some exercise with them fairly quickly, and come to find out, a lot of it was just in their heads. They just weren't using this common language, whether that's the words or the visual language. And so going through this and actually formally documenting it, it really expedited the web design process. It makes it so much easier, and at the end, you're going to get a much better result.
Agreed. All right, I think that's it. Thank you so much for everybody attending this webinar. We have another webinar coming up on February 23rd. We're going to have our Director of Technology, Peter, joining us in that one, just to talk about how technology plays a part in your decisions in redesigning your website. But thanks again, everybody, for being here, and we appreciate it.